Okay, this review will be on the 1987 World Series champion Minnesota Twins. Let's get into it. Let's take a look at their offense. 1-2 in the lineup every day. We have Dan Gladden in left and Gray Gagne at shortstop. Let's take a look at their on base chances. You see those numbers right there. Those numbers check out as just basically a little bit above average. Gladden's numbers against righties is pretty good. Even Gagne's numbers against righties, but I do wish the numbers against left-handed pitching was a little bit higher. Let's move on to the number three hitter. The centerpiece of the order was Kirby Puckett hitting third and obviously playing center field. I'm going to show you all of his numbers right there. You see, really a terrific card for Kirby Puckett in 1987. Now, let's take a look at the meat of the order 4, 5, and 6. Let's take a look at Herbeck, Brunansky, and Gaetti. I'm going to show you their hits with multiple base advancement. The one thing that really sticks out about these cards is they all have really a slew of ballpark effect home runs on their card. The one thing that is a little bit surprising to me, however, is according to the Strat-O-Matic book that comes out with the Diamond Gem set, the ballpark effect home run in Minnesota for 1987 on a D20 for both a left-handed hitter and right-handed hitter is only 1 to 11. I would have thought that that number would have been a little bit higher for left-handed hitting, but that's your ballpark effect home run in Minnesota for 1987. D20, it is a 1 to 11. So you could see on the surface, the numbers don't really jump out at you. I mean, the numbers aren't terrible numbers. They're basically about average, but I would have liked to have seen maybe a few more just couple two asterisk hits or extra base hits, things like that, not necessarily relying on home runs and ballpark effect home runs. Let me show you the DH platoon. Now, the Strat-O-Matic book has Gene Larkin and Roy Smalley listed as the DH platoon, but I'm also going to go ahead and show you the numbers for Don Baylor as well. So let's take a look at the numbers for Larkin, Smalley, and Baylor. I would just make a suggestion and just use Baylor as your DH and use Larkin and Smalley in maybe situations to pinch hit at some point during the game. I just think Don Baylor's card is just a little bit more consistent throughout the board. Although when you look at all of their numbers, when you look at Larkin's numbers and Smalley's numbers together, they basically come out the same as what you get out of Don Baylor. So that's what you have there. So if we're to look at the 1987 Twins offense as a whole, you'll see that they grade out at an above average score of a 3.3 out of 5. I am not crazy about the righty lefty mix in the order. They only came out a little bit above average with that 3 out of 5 score. I do wish they had another viable lefty bat in the order other than just Ken Herbeck. The lineup is a little bit too tilted towards the right-handed side of the plate, and you don't get that much production out of your 8-9 guys with Laudner and Lombardozzi. So that's where we have the 1987 Twins offense come out at a 3.3 out of 5. Now let's take a look at the defense on the Minnesota Twins 1987. Let's get started as we always do, right up the middle with Gagne at short and Lombardozzi at second. No complaints right here. Let's look at the outfield defense. Once again, it checks out very, very well. Now let's stay in the outfield as we investigate the E ratings. And now, once again, let me show you middle of the infield E ratings and the E ratings for your corner infield. And as you look at all of these cards, all of their grades and their E ratings, I'm going to go on record and say this that this may be, not maybe, it is to date the best defensive Stratomatic team that I've ever seen. There are just no issues anywhere with the defense. If you want to get picky and say, well, Gagne's short, E24, maybe that could be, you know, I mean, to me, that's just below the number where I don't want to go above of an E26 at short. But I landed on a perfect score of a 5 out of 5 for defense, as I gave them fives across the board for all the defensive ratings. And I don't think I've done that yet in any of my team analysis videos. I might have to go back and check. The other team that always stuck out to me to being really good defensive team was the 1990 Cincinnati Reds. And if my memory serves me right, I did not give them a perfect 5 out of 5 score for defense because it's hard to get a perfect 5 out of 5 for defense. When you look at the middle infield defense, the outfield defense, and the E ratings, there are just not only are there no holes defensively, but you pretty much have basically guaranteed outs when you roll splits and it comes up to the fielding chart. You've got a one and two twos in the outfield, all ones and twos in the infield, and your E ratings at first base and third base are just off the chart good. Both of those E ratings are just absolutely terrific. So the 1987 Twins get a perfect 5 out of 5 score for their defense. Now let's investigate the 87 Twins starting rotation. Let's get started with the ace, Frank Viola. You see his on base chance numbers. Frank Viola has a little bit of power on his card, which could be a little bit of an issue. And his numbers against left-handed hitting is maybe it's a little bit high. So that's something to keep an eye on if you happen to be playing against the 1987 Twins. Feel free to put some lefty bats in your order because he does have more on base opportunities facing left-handed batters than he does right-handed batters. Now let's take a look at the starting rotation depth. I'm going to show you the numbers for Burt Blyleven, Les Straker, and Joe Niekro, and you see all of their numbers right there. Blyleven's numbers on the surface are just okay. In fact, I would say the same for Straker and Niekro. The issues with Blyleven and Straker is there's just a little too much power for my liking on their cards. And Viola, I know I mentioned that he has a little bit of power on his card, but the power on Blyleven and Straker's card just really sticks out like a sore thumb. And I just really could not give this starting rotation depth a score of anything that would be better than below average. So as we look at the starting rotation score, you'll see I gave the ace Frank Viola a very good score of a 4 out of 5, but I'm just not crazy about the starting rotation depth that you have here. In fact, I would even say the one thing with the going through the 1987 Twins, like I have many times, and I know this is going to sound weird because this was a team that did not lose any games at home when they went on their run in 1987. They won the two games, games 1 and 2 in the ALCS against the Tigers. Then they won games 1, 2, 6, and 7 against the Cardinals in that crazy 87 World Series. But I actually think, in terms of Strat-O-Matic, I think this team would be a little bit better off playing on the road, especially in a ballpark where it is very favorable to pitching. Because I already talked about how good their defense is. And really, the weakness of the Minnesota Twins starting rotation, it's not necessarily the on base numbers. Yes, I know the on base chance numbers are a little bit high on Blyleven, Straker, and Niekro. But what is really a problem with Blyleven and Straker are their ballpark effect home runs. So it's kind of weird how it worked out that way, but I just have that feeling that you would have a little more success playing with the 1987 Twin Strat-O-Matic team if you were playing in a ballpark that was a little more pitcher friendly. So that's my score for the 1987 Twin starting rotation. They grade out at slightly above average as a 3 out of 5. Now let's look at the bullpen. Let's get started with the ace, Jeff Reardon. Really terrific numbers out of Reardon against righties. However, there's an issue facing left-handed batters and a big issue with ballpark effect home runs on his card. That is a big problem, and you really don't like to see that out of the bullpen. Now let's show you the numbers when it comes to the bullpen depth. Let me show you the numbers for George Frazier, Juan Berenguer, and Dan Schatzeder. You see, none of these numbers really check out that great. Berenguer's numbers against righties is nice to have out of the pen, so at least you know you've got Berenguer who could get righties out, and he could get the ball to Reardon, who is very effective against righties, but you got to worry about him facing lefty hitters. So I had the 1987 Twins bullpen grade out at slightly below average. I gave the ace Jeff Reardon just an average score of a 2.5, and the bullpen depth is below average. So they grade out at a 2.25 out of 5. So if we're to peel everything back and look at the 1987 Twins as a whole, you'll see that they grade out at a score of a 3.4 out of 5, which basically means that they are an above average team. I wouldn't say that this is a good team to a very good team. There are definitely some holes in the pitching that you have to worry about. Even with the ace Frank Viola, there is a potential of him getting hit around a little bit with some of his ballpark effect home runs. And I'm just not crazy about the numbers you get out of basically everyone else in the starting pitching and bullpen department. There's really no one guy to fall upon. Like there isn't that lefty reliever that you could bring in who could get like a left-handed batter out. Your um, plan of attack of winning any game with the 1987 Twins is to get production out of your 3 through 6 hitters, Puckett, Gaetti, Herbeck, and Brunansky, and basically rely on the fact that knowing that it's nice that the 87 Twins are not going to beat themselves because of bad defense. You basically know every time you go to the fielding chart, it's going to turn out in your favor because you've got all ones and twos in the field with all very in line E ratings. So at least you know you're not going to hurt yourself defensively. It's just the pitching is a problem on this team. I'm just not crazy about it, which is why I said before, I actually think this team is better off playing on the road in ballparks that are favorable to pitchers. Because once again, the ballpark effect home run for 1987 Minnesota on a D20 is a 1 to 11 for righties and lefties. And the ballpark effect singles on a D20 for a left-handed hitter, it's 1 to 13 on a D20, and it's a 1 to 10 for a right-handed hitter. So it's definitely a ballpark that is not very favorable to pitchers. So that's my grade on the 1987 Minnesota Twins. They grade out at a score of a 3.4 out of 5. I thank you all for watching, and my next video will be on the 1983 World Series champion, Baltimore Orioles. Have a good day, everyone.